Welcome to the Fane of Fantasy. This is the first video in a brand new series where I will not only cover the lore and origins around different mythological and fictional creatures, but I will also give you some thoughts of my own on how to give a cliché and creative new spin to such mythological creatures. Darkness and death has long been the cornerstone of humankind's greatest fears. And it is here we find the vampire, the prince of darkness. Only equaled by dragons, this is my favorite mythological creature. So I think this is the best place to kick off this brand new series. Stay tuned. Before we get into it, I have to apologize for the roughness of my voice. I'm recovering from a bad cold, so it still lingers on in my throat. But I still wanted to get a video out for you guys anyway, so please bear with me. Now, the legends of vampires are rich and have existed for millennia, with cultures dating back to ancient Greece, the Hebrews, and the Romans, all having tales of demonic entities and blood-drinking spirits, which are considered precursors to our modern vampires. In ancient Egypt, the goddess, and forgive me here if I mispronounce this, but the goddess Sekhmet, I think it's called, was known for her taste for blood. In Chinese folklore, vampires had long, hooked claws and red eyes, and we can even go as far back as to the Sumerian and the Babylon Empire, which has myth dating back to 4000 BC. In here we find the Ikamu, which is described as a spirit or demon who wasn't buried properly and returns to suck life from the living. As far as I understand, a natural reaction which can be caused by the decomposition of a body can make a corpse move or sit upright if a coffin is suddenly opened. So I can imagine that you would not need too many grave robbings before this could kind of spin out of control and create a legend of vampires sleeping in coffins. There are clear foundations for the vampire in the ancient world, and it is impossible to prove when the myth actually first arose. But one of the famous ones in our day and age is Dracula. Bram Stoker, the author who invented this Lord of the Night, is said to have modeled some aspect of his Dracula character on a Valician prince. I hope I said that right. And he was named Vlad Tepes or Vlad Dracul, meaning the dragon. Though I have to say that there is no evidence for this to be actually true, but I think that's common belief though. However, Vlad Tepes was born in Romania in December 1431, and when he was born, his father, Vlad Dracul, was the military governor of Transylvania, appointed by the Emperor Sigismund. A year prior to this time, Vlad Dracul, the father that is, was welcomed into the Order of the Dragon, and the order began in 1387 and was a society committed to military and religion. I guess you could kind of call it a men's club by modern standards. Anyway, its members were passionate about preserving the Catholic religion and to fight against the Turks. At age 25 in 1456, our Dracula became prince, and in his brief reign, it's estimated that he killed 100,000 people. He's named the Impaler because he had a tendency to impale his victims on a sharp pole, while he would often eat meals on the field in which his victims hang suspended. He was assassinated in 1476, 45 years old. Today we refer to these undead creatures who consumes the blood and flesh of the living as vampires. How Hollywood depicts vampires are vastly different from what is found in historical myths. We widely believe vampires to be these very old, tall, attractive, intelligent, and aristocratic creatures who sleep in coffins and have an endless thirst for blood. And to kill them, we must stake them through the heart. But in contrast, before Bram Stoker invented Dracula, folkloric vampires were usually peasants of low intelligence, recently dead, and they could be cremated without having to be staked. So modern literature often states that vampires have supernatural powers, and that could be anything from telepathy and mind control to the ability to communicate with and or transform into animals. Again, there is no historical lore that correlates to these concepts, and it seems to be mostly a modern development in the vampire mythology. Take the idea of a vampire being harmed by sunlight, for example. This is also a fairly recent invention. There is no mention of it in historic lore. In fictions, there are many variations of vampires, and one of my personal favorites are the Vampire Chronicles series by Anne Rice. Here sunlight can be used by one vampire to kill another vampire. In folklore, it wasn't only through being bitten by one that it was possible to turn into a vampire yourself. There was multiple ways, like if you had once been a werewolf, or if you practiced sorcery, or you were a child born out of wedlock by parents who was born like that themselves, or if you died before baptism. Pretty much anyone who ate the flesh of a sheep killed by a wolf could turn into a vampire, and even the child of a pregnant woman who was looked upon by a vampire. The list just goes on and on like this, with a nun who stepped over an unburied body, and a cat jumping on a corpse before it had been buried. And there's more, but I think you get the idea. If you became a vampire, several legends claim that you should drink the ashes of a burnt vampire. Maybe it would be better just to prevent an attack in the first place then, and to do that you should make bread from the blood of a vampire and eat it. Yummy. I don't know if that's actually any better. Well, then we of course have the usual suspects of repellents like churches, crucifixes, garlic, holy water, and so on. That was a breakdown of the lore itself, but I promised to give you my thoughts on how we could give the cliché vampire a creative spin, so let's have a go at it. But before we run rampant though, I want to mention the positives on familiarity. If we create a vampire that instantly sets some ideas and expectations with our audience, and those will be aligned with many of the modern versions I have been talking about so far. And with much less linkage to the folklore versions of vampires. So my idea is that we give the current perception of a vampire a twist in a new direction, rather than turning it completely upside down. If we did do that, I think we would run the risk of our audience not even associating our creation with a vampire any longer. Okay, so I quite like the idea of vampires being awakened to the endless night, where they hunger for the life they have lost and sate that hunger by drinking the blood of the living. I also like that the vampires are burned by sunlight, as it provides a clear disadvantage which we could play off. So let's also stick with our vampire never casting any shadows or any reflections. That was the clichés, but let's keep those in the name of familiarity. Where I think we can add our touch of uniqueness is in an obvious chicken and egg argument. If we say that only a vampire can create another vampire, then logically the history of vampires would begin with a single vampire creating the others. But if there are no vampires to make the first vampire, how was the first vampire then made? Therein lies our story. We could create our own unique mythology where a demon, or perhaps one of or several of the gods, bestowed a great hero with this terrible curse and turned him into the first of his kind. What did he do to deserve this? How about becoming so powerful that mankind began worshipping him as a god and neglected the true gods in their worshipping? The almighty creators just can't have that now, can they? So they curse him into this being to get him out of the way. All our former hero dreams of now is the world in which he once lived in decadence and luxury, where he ruled over kingdoms. A great story of vengeance, unwanted dark desires, and a great threat to mankind has just been born. I hope you like that, and there is no copyright here on that idea, so steal away as you please. Hit the like button below if you like this video, and I would love to hear your thoughts on vampires in the comment fields below, and maybe you could suggest a new spin on a vampire on your own. Make sure to subscribe and get new videos every single Monday, and also check out my Patreon page. There is a link right here on the screen somewhere and in the description field below here. And for as little as $1 a month, you will get into the reward program. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.